Welcome to Oops, I Adulted, the podcast where we discuss uncomfortable truths with uncomfortable jokes. We're here to remind you that adulting doesn't need to be serious and grim. It can also be happy and funny, just with back pain.
Welcome back to Oops, I Adulted, the politics edition, where we're still trying to understand why our salary increase was less than inflation. And today we're tackling economic systems because apparently how you buy things is a political statement now. Who knew that your piggy bank had political opinions? Turns out it's been giving speeches behind your back this whole time. And now let's start with economy's greatest experiments. Number one with capitalism. As Adam Smith put it, follow your self-interest. And we've been using that to justify everything from innovation to ignoring homeless people ever since. But here's the funny thing. Smith wasn't just some cold-hearted, greedist good guy. According to historian Samuel Fleischacker in 2004, Smith's defense of markets was embedded in a broader moral philosophy that emphasized sympathy and justice alongside self-interest. So basically, Smith was like, be selfish, but also, don't be a jerk about it.
Whoa!
What we think economics says versus what it actually says are often two different things. According to economist Deirdre McCloskey in 2006, points out that capitalism requires specific moral commitments beyond self-interest.
No way!
It's like your friend who claims to be brutally honest, but is really just emphasizing the brutal part and forgetting about the honest. Then comes Great Economic Depressions, the world's harshest lessons that maybe markets need some adult supervision after all. As economic historian Charles Kindleberger in 1986 documented, the severity of the downturn completely undermined confidence in unregulated markets. And suddenly everyone was like, maybe letting the invisible hand do whatever it wants isn't working out so great. It's like realizing your toddler's independent playtime has resulted into classical Sharpie drawings all over your walls. John Maynard Keynes swooped in with some radical ideas, arguing that governments should actually spend money during downturns to keep things going. One of his famous lines was, "In the long run, we are all dead." And it wasn't just some morbid observation. It was a moral claim that presents suffering matters more than hypothetical future benefits. And this was way back in 1923. And basically Keynes was saying, sure, the market might eventually fix itself, but we'll all be dead by then, so maybe let's do something now? Wow, what a revolutionary concept. This led to modern mixed economies, where we realized pure capitalism is like an unsupervised toddler. Exciting results, but someone's definitely gonna get hurt. In 2001, political economists Hall and Soskis showed there are actually different flavors of capitalism. Liberal market economies like the US emphasize competition and flexible labor markets, which is a fancy way of saying, you're on your own, buddy. Coordinated market economies like Germany feature greater collaboration between firms, workers, and the state. Now let's talk about adulting through economic chaos, or mostly about your personal finance. The stuff they definitely should have taught in school, but decided trigonometry was more important. Oh yeah. First up, understanding your taxes. The annual ritual where you realize you don't know what a deduction is, despite being a functioning adult.
No way, dude. Gnarly.
In 1997, political scientist Christopher Howard calls the U.S. tax system a hidden welfare state because we deliver benefits through tax deductions for things like mortgages and health insurance rather than direct spending. It's like the government is saying, we want to help you, but we're going to do it in the most confusing way possible, so you need to hire an expert or buy special software. Thank you very much. Back in 2013, historian Ajay Mehrotra points out that progressive taxation, where richer people pay higher tax rates, wasn't just about revenue. It emerged from specific concerns about concentrated economic power.
Wow.
And so, when your wealthy uncle complains about his tax rate at Thanksgiving, you can say, actually, historically speaking, that's working as intended. Then quickly change the subject before the gravy boat gets weaponized.
We're under attack.
Up next, inflation explained, meaning when your money is worth less but nobody gave you a heads up. Economists describe inflation in these technical terms about monetary policy and aggregate demand, but for us regular humans, it's more like, why does my coffee cost how much now? According to economic journalist John Lanchester in 2014, this fancy economist language makes democratic engagement with economic policy more difficult by presenting economic outcomes as beyond our control. It's like when your doctor uses Latin terms instead of just saying, yeah, that's a weird rash. And let's not forget retirement planning, starting to care about something that feels as distant as interstellar travel. In 2014, economists like Raj Shetty have shown that your retirement prospects actually depend heavily on where you grow up and obviously your family's resources. So when financial advisors actually say just start saving early, they're ignoring the fact that some people are starting the race in the stadium parking lot while others are already at the finish line taking selfies.
Hello there, fellow reluctant adults. Just taking a quick break to ask a favour from you and your friends to hit those like, follow and share buttons while you listen. It inspires us to research the things you probably didn't want to know. And now, back to pretending we understand life and its mysteries.
All right, let's take a tour of different economic approaches around the world, shall we? It's like economic tourism, but without the jet lag or questionable street food as we discuss economic neighborhoods. First up, Nordic social democracies, where there's high taxes, but at least you get something in return besides military equipment. Political scientist Gosta Esping Anderson in 1990 identified these as social democratic welfare regimes, where benefits are universal citizenship rights rather than targeted poverty relief. It's the difference between saying we're all in this together versus we'll help you if you prove you're pathetic enough. That sounds very familiar.
Isn't that amazing?
In 1998, researcher Bo Rothstein calls this a specific moral logic that treats welfare as a right rather than a charity. Well, isn't that a novel concept? Meanwhile, in the US and increasingly the UK, as well as from my personal observation across Asia, we have what scholars call liberal welfare regimes that emphasize targeted assistance and personal responsibility. Political scientist Suzanne Mettler in 2011 calls this the submerged state because benefits are often hidden in tax codes and private systems. It's like when somebody offers to split dessert with you but then eats 80% of it while talking about how generous they're being. Next on our tour, tax havens, where it's the VIP room of global finance where the entry fee is being rich enough to afford creative accounting. In 2015, economist Gabriel Zuckman found that about 8% of global household financial wealth, and that's trillions of dollars, is hiding somewhere in tax havens. It's like playing Monopoly, where some players get to hide their hotels under the board while still collecting rent. When you tried that as a kid, it was called cheating. When the man does it, it's called tax planning. And finally, let's talk about economic inequality, when the economic ladder has different materials depending on which step you start from. Philosopher Elizabeth Anderson back in 1999 points out that we evaluate inequality depends on whether we're focusing on outcomes, opportunities, relations, or acquisition processes. In other words, it's complicated, which is what people say when they don't want to update their social media relationship status or admit that the system might be rigged. In 2015, economists Thomas Piggy and Anthony Atkinson have documented rising inequality in advanced economies, challenging claims that market distributions reflect natural meritocratic processes. Their data basically says, that get-rich story you like so much? Yeah, that's not really how it works. Turns out most modern fortunes come less from brilliant innovations and more from things like inherited wealth, monopoly power, and knowing which politicians it takes. Well, here's a big secret economists don't want you to know. Economics isn't just about money. It's about values. This disguises math. Philosophers like Deborah Satz and Daniel Hausman in 2016 have shown that economic theories and policies always reflect specific value commitments about social organization, rights, and responsibility. Simply put, when someone says the market has decided, or it's just economics, they are actually just pulling the ultimate sleight of hand. As researchers Block and Sommers argue from 2014, this market fundamentalism obscures the political construction of markets and their dependence on specific laws and regulations. So markets don't just happen, they're designed by humans with specific interests and values.
No way!
So shocking, I know. And as we close, just remember, economics isn't just about the money. It's about values, just disguised as math. And now, your homework, the next time someone makes an economic argument, just ask, who benefits? Because that's usually the point, right?
Totally righteous.
As scholars like Marianne Foucault in 2009 have shown, economics gains authority by presenting itself as a value-neutral science, rather than as a framework for organizing society. It's like someone saying, I'm just being logical, when they're actually expressing a very specific worldview. This has been Oops, I Adulted, making the dismal science slightly less dismal. Until next time, remember, your economic beliefs are just your values with a calculator. And sometimes that calculator is using some very questionable math.
Well, that's all the adulting we can handle for this episode. If you've made it this far, we understand if you were not sleeping and were only resting your eyes, so congratulations. You're better at this than we are. We're hoping you learned something new just as we did. After all, that's what adulting is all about. Thanks, and we'll catch you on the next episode.